Yeah, maybe you can share just a little bit about your journey. I heard you speak at RAFest. There's a point of transformation for you,
Yeah,
correct?
absolutely. You
Yeah.
know,
What transformed you?
well, transformed me. Well, I mean, life hit me over the head and said, "Hey, you can't go on living this way anymore." And for me, well, it's hard to not talk about my boat refugee story and kind of growing up in America because I think people can maybe relate, to some part of the story of maybe living life that is not authentic to who you are as a person, as a being, as a soul. And so, boat refugee, 8 months on a boat, 3 months in a refugee camp, come to America basically penniless. And I remember I was, bused to a more affluent area for school. So I was constantly being teased for the holes in my hand-me-down clothes, the Chinese food my mom sent me to school with. I got a lot of the go home to your, go back to your home country, chinky. I got all these chinky eye, comments directed at me. And so as a kid, I remember just feeling like I didn't belong and that who I was not accepted. And then at home, I decided, wanted to be an actor. I wanted to speak and do all these things in the art world. And parents were like, no, we didn't travel around the world for you to be an actor. So, I went into biology and I studied medicine. And for me, it was always like, okay, I couldn't really please my parents at home, and I didn't really belong in the world outside. And so it led me to just sort of live life thinking like I needed to be someone else outside of myself. And hopefully, success or attaining something on the outside, looking a certain way on the outside, sounding a certain way on the outside would make me accepted and loved. And that's how I was living my life. And so I remember in high school, just like, gunning to be valedictorian and, always like push myself to be the best at where I was. When I chose a field in medicine, I was like, okay, well, what pays the most and what is the most high tech field that's out there? Okay, interventional radiology. So I went and I did that. And so I became a young attending that started to speak around the world on the advances of interventional radiology, eventually becoming chief of IR in my hospital. And at that point, I had bought a fancy car that I never thought I would drive, bought my dream house, but inside I was burnt out. I was tired. I was overweight. I was diabetic. I had high blood pressure and I was on several prescription medications. And I said, why is life the way it is when I did everything I was supposed to do? Why do I not feel love? Why do I not feel satisfied? And why is my body breaking down? And it was just a huge wake-up call for me to, reevaluate my life. And so I took a break from full-time medicine and I, got into the biohacking world. I studied with spiritual shamans. I had, plant medicine journeys along the path. And I started to make some changes, but from a new state of being, started to make new choices in my life. And then as I started to make these new choices, I recognized that the disease patterns just went away in like 6 months. Reverse diabetes, lost all the inflammatory visceral fat, biologically aged backwards. And I was able to do that. Then I, had a concierge practice, and I was able to do that for a lot of my clients as well. But after a while, I was realizing that the work that I was doing with individual clients, the biggest and most deep work that I was doing with them was having them realize, were they living a unconscious life like I was? I was so programmed to seek success and chase after that that it basically led me to have disease in my body. And with the work that I'm doing, I started to understand, that for many of us as kids, we've got the soul and essence that wants to express ourselves in a certain way. And when we're told not to be this and to be that and not to enjoy this and all of these things, we end up putting armor around ourselves, around our true essence, and we live life wearing this mask of not who we are. And that's the thing, is if we live a life that's inauthentic, we're basically telling our body that we are in danger. So if you're running off the default programs that were given to you as a child when you weren't aware, and you live life that way, you'll find yourself being stressed out all the time. And you send very powerful messages to your cells that I am not safe. And what it does is epigenetically, it turns on the stress and danger response in our body, which causes inflammation to go up, which lowers our immune system. And those two things together is basically the environment that causes chronic symptoms and chronic disease. And if we could start to reverse that and start to remember who we are, and then make conscious choices about, how we live life, particularly in the 7 areas I mentioned in my book: sleep, nutrition, movement, our thoughts, our emotions, our community, and living that sense of purpose, we start to shift the energetic states in our body. And that is actually very beautiful, that now we know that every single choice that we have can be medicine or it can be our poison.